Hello there everyone and welcome to another edition of Lydia's Crafty Corner with me, Lydia, in my little crafty corner. So today I'm going to be playing with the new August release, and I've got a bunch of products in here and some oldie goodies, kind of sentiment ones too. So to start with, I have a piece of cardstock. This is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I've masked off 3/4 inch from all of the sides. I'm then going to be using the fabulous new Caribbean Life layering stencil, and this is going to create like the perfect beach scene. It is so fabulous. So I have the first one here, and this first one is going to colour in the sea or the ocean. So to start with, I'm going to be using the Dew Drops ink, and I'm just going to add this through the stencil to add colour to that piece that we have masked off on our card. So with this, it is really easy to do. I'm trying to add more of the ink along the top and along the bottom, so I'm going to get that kind of maybe a highlight in the middle of the ocean look. That's what I'm after. I'm not sure I really got it, but it is going to look perfect anyway, so don't worry too much about that. I'm using a small blending tool for this, but you could use a larger one if you find that that works better for you. It's completely up to you what you want to use for that. So once I'm happy with the amount of ink that I have there, I'm going to remove that stencil, and then I'm going to move on to stencil number 2. Now this is going to add some of the little waves that we have. I'm just lining that up with the bottom edge that we have that's going to be the sand, and also that top line that we have for the horizon. So the colour that I am going to be using for this is the Aqualicious. So I'm going to add that through. I'm trying to add more of the ink towards the back so it looks darker, but you can add as much as you want. You could do different blues, you could add more in greens if you wanted to have more of a turquoise kind of colour. But I do find that this Aqualicious is just really lovely for this kind of ocean feel that I'm going for. Once I've added enough ink, I'm going to move that stencil up, and I'm just going to pop that into place again. And this is just going to add in some darker little tidal waves, or just some little waves anyway. And I'm just going to be using the Teal Cave to add that in. I've just done that really lightly. I didn't want too darker of a wave in there, so that's why I've just gone with a little amount of ink. I'm then going to move on to the next stencil, and this is going to add in your little sand. So I've just butted that right up to the water, and I am going to be using the Sand Dunes ink for this one. Now the ink is a little yellow in the picture, only because I've used a blending tool that I already had yellow ink on. So if you didn't want so much of a yellow color, don't worry. The Sand Dunes isn't normally that color. It's because my blending tool had a lot of yellow on it. So once I've done that, I can move that stencil up, and this is going to add in that kind of little tide line where the sand is more wet, where the water's just been. And I'm going to be using the Rocky Shore to add that in again. Again, there is yellow on my blending tool, so everything's a little bit more yellow than it would be. But there we go. Just look how pretty that looks. To add in the sky, I'm just masking off what I've done with a piece of scrap paper or copy paper, and I'm just using the ink that I had left on my ink blending tool just to add a little bit of a gradient right at the top. I'm adding more of that ink along the horizon and then just feathering that off towards the top. Once I'm done, that is my little beach scene complete. You can see how just quick and easy that was to create this fabulous look here. I am going to remove the masking tape. As you can see, I'm being really careful with this. I'm just trying to pull it back kind of on itself to make sure that I don't tear anything. I did tear a little bit in that corner, but I'm not going to worry too much. I don't think people are going to notice that too much, but I am doing this very, very carefully. If you do find that your masking tape is sticking a lot more than you would like, you can actually heat it up a little bit, and that will kind of release the adhesive just a little. And here is my scene complete. I'm going to move that over, and I'm going to have another piece of white cardstock, and I have added some double-sided adhesive to this. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the Zero Waste Fun Little Flowers die from this. So I'm just going to line it up, and I don't need all of this cardstock, so I am going to trim that out a little bit, just so I don't waste my cardstock with my double-sided adhesive on. It is precious, and I do tend to use the double-sided adhesive only when I need it. I'm also adding a little bit of tape just to make sure that it doesn't move around while I do run this through my die cutting machine. So once that has been run through, everything has been cut perfectly. I just love how well this die cuts. Even though it's so detailed, it is just perfect. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove all of the little pieces. Now, the only piece that I really need for this at the minute is the waist. So the bit with the flowers are not is what I'm going to be using on my card, but I can definitely keep all of these little pieces that I have here. Remember, they do have that double-sided on the back, so I can use that for a different project as well. So as you can see, I'm just removing those. I did choose to leave some of them on the little kind of release tape, and I'll just keep those to the side and I can use that on a different project. But I have my sticky piece here and I'm just going to add that onto a piece of vellum, and this is what I'm going to be able to cut out my large sentiment from. So that's why I'm adding it to the vellum, so I'm then able to kind of have this pattern on the letters, but I've also got that see-through feel from the vellum as well. You could add that onto a piece of acetate if you wanted a more see-through look, but I am going to be using the vellum. I'm also going to be using the Caps Bold Alpha to die cut my letters out. I'm using the Y, the O, and the U to create the sentiment U. So I'm just popping that into place, again adding a little bit of tape so it doesn't move around while I run that through my machine, as I do want all of that really pretty pattern on these letters. So once I have those cut, you can see just how well they have cut. They look perfect, and I love the kind of softness that the vellum is giving that as well, and you can see just how pretty these are gonna look. Now you could definitely do these for all different occasions and create your own different sentiments out of this. I just love how it works. So I'm just gonna pop this into place so I can kind of get a feel for the rest of my sentiment. So there we go, I'm just going to pop that there, and that is where it's going to be later on. I'm then going to take the Caribbean Dreams die set, and I just love this die set. I was particularly kind of drawn to the little pearl shell that we have. So I'm taking all of the pieces for the pearl shell. I didn't actually use the pearl, but you'll see what we can use later on. So I'm using the main part of the pearl shell from some cardstock, and this is the Sand Dunes cardstock, and I also have the Rocky Shore. The Rocky Shore does have some double-sided adhesive on already, because that's going to be the kind of more detailed part, but with the main part I didn't put any on the back of that because I am going to stick this up with some double-sided, some foam tape. So don't worry about sticking the double-sided on the large piece, just the small piece. So once that has been done, I'm just going to remove this from the die, and that is going to have the sticky on the back of it. All I'm going to need to do is just add this on top of that little shell piece that we have. I am lining up that bottom edge first, and then once I have that in place, I'm kind of sticking that down and then moving around the rest of the shell, trying to get it lined up perfectly towards the edges, and this just looks fabulous. I love the little detail of the embossed lines in there to give that really cool kind of rounded look to the shell. I then have some of the enamel dots from Altenew. These are from the Fall Harvest, and this is the lightest colour, but you could definitely use a real kind of pearl looking one or different colours. For the rest of the sentiment, I am going to be kind of masking off to create my own sentiment. So we can create the "You are Pearl-fect." See what I did there? So that's a little pun that we have for the pearl. So I'm using the "You are" stamp set, sorry. And the first one that I'm going to be using is the Perfectly Imperfect. Now the only part of this that I want is the "fect." So I'm going to have Pearl-fect. So that's why I just want the "fect" part on this. So I am going to mask out the "per" and also "imperfect" on the other side, the "ly" and then "imperfect." So it is only a tiny bit of this whole sentiment that I need. So I'm just using a bit of tape either side to mask out the pieces that I don't need. Then I'm going to ink that up using the Obsidian ink, and then I am going to remove those pieces of tape and then stamp that onto position onto a piece of white cardstock. Now remember to take that tape off, otherwise you will stamp a mess. Then I'm going to go with the one the sentiment that has the R right at the end, and that's all I need. I just need that R sentiment. So again, I'm just going to be masking that off, and then I can stamp that and into place where I need it to be. As you can see, I am keeping my little shell in place because I want this perfectly spaced around it. So I'm just going to stamp the R again with the obsidian ink. So once that has been done, I wanted to add a little hyphen, so it was like Pearl-fect. So I'm just adding that in, just using a fine liner pen from Altenew. And then once that has been done and it is dry, the ink is dry, I'm then just going to trim that into a nice little strip, just using my trimming tool here. Now all I need to do is pop my sentiments into place. Now this one can be a little bit tricky because we are adding adhesive behind the letters, and you want to add the adhesive where the cardstock is and not just the vellum, because you will be able to see through the vellum itself and see the adhesive, which isn't particularly pretty, but it's not that noticeable if you do get a little bit over. So that's why I'm trying to just add the glue just to the cardstock piece. Once that has been done, I'm going to add a little bit of foam tape just behind my sentiment strip. I'm just going to play around where I want that to be. It is going to cover over that U a bit, but I do like the fact that it's kind of all stacked together, and it's going to give us that really clean and simple look, even though we do have a lot of kind of techniques and layers going on here. I've added a little bit of foam just behind the shell, added that into place onto the sentiment strip, and then I'm just going to add the sentiment strip right into place across the U. And I just think that this card is completely perfect. I really do hope that you like the card as well, and that you've enjoyed the video. If you do create a card that was inspired by this, it'd be great if you do share, because I'd love to see. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and we'll see you again really, really soon. Bye-bye. Hey there, Lydia here. I really do hope that you've just enjoyed the video. If so, please subscribe to the Altenew YouTube channel. Also, turn on the notification bell so you can get your daily dose of crafty techniques and tutorials just like this. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.